Okay, so good evening, everyone. Today's session is about UPSC main exam decoding the ideal structure of an answer in mains exam. So let's begin without wasting any time. First thing, how to score a good, how to get good score in any question. The key lies in the question itself. The question tells you what it wants from you. All right. So in every question we have a verb which tells you what to do, what is required, and if you decode that verb correctly, then like half of your job is done. So how to approach a question ideally? We have some standard steps how to do that. First of all, you must read the question calmly. This is a mistake that a lot of candidates make because of nervousness, because of the atmosphere of the exam itself, that they tend to look for familiar words inside a question. All right. And more often than not, if you are reading the question too fast and trying to complete the paper on time, what happens is that you most likely are going to misinterpret the question. And regardless of how good your response is or how good your handwriting is or how many facts you present, if you have not decoded the verb correctly, then all your hard work is going to go in vain. All right, so this is a very important step, and many candidates do not pay heed to this one. First thing is to read the question calmly with patience, even if you get a little less time for writing the response, but it is important to decode the question correctly. First thing, do not get emotional if you see some familiar words inside it, and do not start scribbling all that you know about that specific word that is familiar to you. Sometimes what you are going to present inside that answer sheet may not even be required by the question. All right, so try to avoid making this mistake. Second thing is break the question into parts. Every question is usually an assortment of two or three parts, so you need to break it up accordingly and then address each part according to the verb. Third thing is identify the verb or verbs. Sometimes more than one verb may be given, and you'll have to decode it accordingly. And after you have done all these three steps, then you have to obey the order of the parts. Like some people, if they find certain segment of the question easier, they will try to attempt it earlier than the prescribed order in the question itself. This is not a very good practice, and you should avoid it. You should address the question as per the sequence provided by the question itself. All right. So we have been talking about this decoding this verb thing. Now, it is important that we go through a list of most popular verbs that are asked, and I have created an exhaustive list of these verbs, and I have also given a description against each verb that is mentioned in the question. And if you go through this almost like, even if you do it weekly, you are most likely to imbibe the meaning of all these verbs, and it's going to help you immensely in the actual exam. So now we are going to have a look at the various verbs that are popular with the UPSC and any exam for that matter. I have created an exhaustive list. You won't find anything outside of this list in the examination. So the verbs that are usually asked in questions are these. First of all, the most common one is analyze, critically analyze, or analyze itself. So we'll look at what it requires us to do. Whenever you see this word analyze mentioned in the question paper, you have to follow this algorithm. First of all, analysis means breaking an issue into its constituent parts. Analysis is breaking up a complex structure so that only the fundamental or simple structures are left. All right. Like if you start breaking down any chair or any matter for that sake, eventually you will arrive at the fundamental constituent particles, that is atoms, the simplest particle. So in analysis, this is what is done. A complex question is taken, and or a concept is taken, and it is broken down into its constituent parts. Second thing that you have to do is once you have broken down it into its simplest parts, you have to look in depth at each part, and you have to use supporting arguments and evidence for or against any stance that you are taking. So this is the second thing you have to do. And the third thing, which will complete your task, is that you have to interrelate all these parts with each other. All right, you don't have to just present arguments for and against each simplest part and leave it at that. No, that is not a complete job. The next thing that you have to do is that you have to interrelate them to each other. For example, let's say a question comes on the problem of malnutrition in India. So what we can do is that we can break up malnutrition into several parts, like it could be hidden hunger, or calorie malnutrition, or protein malnutrition. So these are the simpler parts. Then we'll look at each of them individually, and we will also try to interlink the simpler parts with each other. That will be a comprehensive approach to this type of question. Next verb that is famous is assess. So let's come up with the algorithm. First of all, what does assess mean? Assess means giving an assessment of something, or weighing up to what extent something is true, or up to what extent something is correct. In this thing, you have to persuade the examiner of your argument. If you are taking a stance for or against a particular proposition that is mentioned in the question, so you have to cite relevant research, but you also have to point out any flaws and counter arguments that go opposite of the stance that you are taking. All right, you just don't have to take a particular stance and leave it at that. You have to mention any counter arguments as well. Any alternative points of view that are different from you also have to be mentioned. And in the conclusion, you have to somehow prove that your stance is better than the alternative stance. Like if a question comes for that matter, like we saw on 26th January what happened in this so-called farmers protest, and on Z News there was a talk show which mentioned B.R. Ambedkar and his dislike for such unconstitutional methods of protest. In fact, he used the term grammar of anarchy for methods like satyagraha or civil disobedience. He said that civil disobedience and satyagraha methods were valid when we were being ruled by despotic British government, but after gaining independence, once we have instrument of elections in which we can vote a government out which does not listen to us, so we should outlaw this satyagraha, this bhuk hartal and dharna pradarshan and all that. So if a question comes, do you agree that satyagraha is a grammar of anarchy? So this is a proposition. You have to take a stance that you agree or you don't agree, but you also have to give alternative viewpoints. Like if you are agreeing with Ambedkar that, okay, yeah, in a democratically elected government which governs you by your consent, that is expressed in elections after every 5 years, there is no need of such unconstitutional methods of protest. But then you also have to mention civil disobedience philosophy of Henry David Thoreau, who was the encouragement behind Gandhiji's idea and adoption of satyagraha and everything. So you also have to give a passing reference to any alternative views that exist. And then you have to point out the flaws in the alternative arguments so that your own argument looks superior to them. All right. Next, we come to clarify. This is also a very common verb that is used. So it means making something clearer, simplifying it. If there is a very complex phenomenon or a complex issue that is being talked about, you just have to simplify it. Like let's say they ask you what is twin balance sheet syndrome. So you have to give a definition and you have to explain by very simple example what is twin balance sheet syndrome. Or if they ask you the phenomenon that the real economy was depreciating or going into recession whereas the stock market was booming, so clarify what is going on, right? So what you can do is that you can use as simple words as possible. You can say that nation states adopt an expansionary monetary policy stance whenever an economy goes into recession, and that easy money is supposed to go to the productive sectors of economy. But if you are releasing it in form of cheap credit instead of direct benefit transfers or direct cash transfers, like USA is doing direct cash transfers, but Indian government did not send us any money. In fact, they are only reducing the interest rates and they are encouraging people to take more loans. But a common man who has lost his job recently, he cannot even dare to go to a bank to ask for loan because he is not sure if he will be able to pay back the loan on time. So he won't take more risk. So the loans will be taken by billionaires, and what they are doing is that they are taking these cheap loans and then they are pumping this money into the share market or gold or Bitcoin and everything, and that is why everything is forming a bubble while the real economy is going into recession. So by using very simple language, you can clarify a complex issue like this. Examples are very important whenever the verb clarify is used. Next verb is comment upon. The algorithm for this is you have to pick out the main points on a subject and you have to give your opinion on that. Comment upon means only the main points will be picked up, because you can comment like in 500 pages, 1,000 pages on any topic of the day, but you don't have that much time in an examination hall. So all you have to do is take out like 4 5 salient points and then give your opinion on that. And whenever you posit an opinion on any point that is mentioned, you have to reinforce your point of view using logical references, and you also have to give evidences to support your claims. So comment upon tries to gauge how wide reading you have done on a particular topic. The number of aspects and viewpoints that you will present before the examiner, the better score he is going to give you. Because everyone who has qualified the prelim stage of this exam is uh, probably one of the elite students of this country, and they all have certain generic data inside their heads, which most of them will present in the examination hall. But the examiner is looking for scholars who have in-depth knowledge of almost every topic that is being asked in the exam. And so the wider reading you have done, the more examples you will be able to present, the more facts you will be able to present, and the more point of views you'll be able to present on a given topic. That is what comment upon is all about. Next, we come to the verb called compare. In this, we have to identify similarities and differences. Both things have to be taken care of. And it is also analogous to asking compare and contrast. And usually these two verbs occur together in any question. Compare is always accompanied by contrast mostly. Next, we come to consider. So you have to give your consideration for a particular topic. So in this, you have to say what you think and have observed about something. All right. What you think, what is your logic, and what is the practical data that you have collected about something. You might have certain assumptions or certain arguments about a particular thing, certain attitudes, but in reality, the case might be entirely different. So you have to present both your ideas on a particular topic and what you have observed. All right. Like, let's say a question comes, uh, is affirmative action in form of reservations a good method to create an equal society, a casteless society in India? So there might be some theories which say that it is an ideal action, but when we look at it in practical terms, we are seeing that it is hardening the already very pervasive caste divide in India. All right, so you have to mention all this. Apart from that, you'll get extra marks if you include any views which are contrary to your own, and you also have to relate them to what you originally thought. Next is contrast. So it is very similar to compare and contrast, but in this one, if it is used alone, you have to give a passing reference to similarities, but you have to concentrate more on dissimilarities. If you are short on time, then just leave out the similarities and just focus on dissimilarities. Next is critically evaluate. So in this thing, you have to give a judgment, you have to give your verdict as to what extent a statement or findings that are mentioned in the question are true, or how far do you agree with something. You also have to provide evidence if you are agreeing or disagreeing, and you also have to give alternative views which oppose you, and you have to come to a conclusion. You have to state how your conclusion is better than conclusion of others. You have to justify your choice. You have to make a choice. You cannot leave it open ended. You have to say yes or no eventually, and you also have to justify why you have said yes or no. Next is define. In this thing, you have to give a precise meaning of something. uh, this is one thing, most of the people will do this, but you'll get extra marks if you bring out any problems posed with the definition and any different interpretation that may exist. I was checking your answers recently, and in ethics question paper there was a question on define attitude and the cab model of attitude. Most people have done it because almost everyone is aware of it, but you would get extra marks only if you highlight any flaws in that definition, that cab model. There are alternative models to the cab model. If you are not aware of that, you are lacking in a scholarly knowledge of that topic. All right, that is what UPSC is looking for, because everyone will write cab model, they'll draw diagrams and everything, but if you bring out any problems with that definition and give any alternative definition as well, you'll get extra marks. Next is demonstrate. So to demonstrate is like to try to help the reader visualize any phenomenon. And in this thing, you have to use examples to illustrate your point. Next thing is describe. So in description, you have to give a verbal picture. It's like you are painting something. You are creating portrait of something of real world in words. Instead of using a canvas and a paint, you are using a pen and paper. So you have to give a detailed explanation as to how and why something happens. Next is discuss. So discussion is basically a written debate, as if you were standing in a court and arguing for or against a particular point. So in this thing, your reasoning skills are tested. You also have to give credible evidence to support your philosophical claims for and against an argument. You also have to bring out any advantages and disadvantages of the stance that you are taking. And eventually, in a discussion, you have to close the discussion. In the conclusion, you have to say yes or no. You have to come at a final judgment. You cannot leave it open ended. Next is a lot of people like to go for way forward. All right, so way forward is like a kind of closing argument or a judgment. Next is elaborate. This is the opposite of clarify. In clarify, you have to simplify something. In elaborate, you have to present something in all its details. You have to give more information on something. Next is evaluate. This is almost the same as critically evaluate or assess. You have to give a judgment and also justify that judgment. Examine. This is like you have to take a magnifying glass and examine something very carefully. And when you take a magnifying glass and look at something, you see its internal structure and interrelationships between its various parts. All right, that is exactly what you have to do. You have to try and offer reasons as to why the facts and issues you have identified are most important. They'll give you any phenomenon. You have to identify the most important issues associated with that phenomenon. like women empowerment is a very big topic. All right, a lot of things come under women empowerment, but from Indian context there are some things that stand out, especially safety at workplace, all right, financial independence, uh, flexibility in marriage, so stuff like that. You cannot discuss each and everything because women empowerment is a topic that you can write entire books on. All right, so what this examine requires you that just bring out the most important points and discuss them in detail. Next is explain. In this you have to clarify a topic by giving a detailed account, like explain tsunamis. So you have to give a detailed account as to how and why it occurs. You have to develop causal relationships, and your writing should have clarity, and you should use as simple a language as possible. You can also try to draw diagrams to illustrate it. You can define key terms where appropriate, and you can also substantiate it with examples or data. Next is explore. So in this thing, you have to be curious, you have to adopt a questioning approach, and you have to look at a particular concept from different viewpoints. They are encouraging you to be innovative over here. But after propounding all the different viewpoints, if possible, you have to reconcile opposing viewpoints, you have to synthesize them in the end. Next is give an account of. This means giving a detailed description of something. It's almost same as painting something in words. All right, as we discussed earlier as well. This should not be confused with account for. Account for does not ask you merely for a description, but it asks you why something is happening. All right. Account of means what is happening, and account for means why is it happening. So you have to revise this list almost like you can do it every morning or you can do it weekly. And after 2, 3 months, you will imbibe it permanently. Next is identify. Identification means determine what are the key points to be addressed and implications thereof. Like identify the crucial implications of farm bills and things like that. Next is illustrate. So this is very similar to explain. You have to lay something out. You have to explain it in detail. You have to give a lot of examples and statistics to add weight to your explanation. Next is interpret. So in this thing, something will be given to you and you have to demonstrate your understanding of an issue by transforming it into simpler words of your own. In this thing, it is very important to take out significant patterns and causal relationships in something that is very complex, like let's say criminalization of politics in India. That is a very complex issue. A lot of factors go into it. So you have to point out some significant patterns that you observe and causal relationships, like why does it happen. Next is justify. In justification, you have to make a case by providing a body of evidence to support your ideas for or against something. And like we discussed earlier, you will get extra marks if you also give some passing reference to alternative viewpoints which are different from yours, and try to conclude how your argument is better than the alternative ones, because no person is perfect. If you are able to pay enough attention to any alternative viewpoints that occur, that means you are going to make a very good officer in future. A good officer is not rigid. He also considers any alternative decisions or any alternative viewpoints that may occur apart from his own. We should be open minded. Next is outline. In outline, we have to give the main structural points, and we have to place a lot of emphasis on global structures and interrelationships rather than the minute detail. All right, we have to generalize. all right, like let's say problems of democracy. So we don't have to focus on Indian democracy itself. We have to focus on general problems of democracy anywhere in the world, like universal democracy. What is the problem in the idea of democracy, the challenges that it faces? Next is review. So this is like reviewing a movie. This has to be a critical assessment. You don't have like whenever you see movie reviews on internet, they don't narrate the story itself. All right, they'll give a critical assessment on what was good inside the movie or what wasn't good inside the movie. So you have to do that. Next is show how. In this, you are required to present in a logical manner with reference to any relevant evidence, the stages and combination of factors that give rise to something. Right? You have to trace the entire evolution of a phenomenon. Like let's say global warming. You have to go back to the industrial times and how we, in a culture of consumerism, kept polluting the environment, kept over exploiting it without replenishing its buffers, and that is how global warming brought us to this point. Next is state. In this thing, you have to specify in clear terms the key aspects of a topic, and you have to try avoid being too descriptive over here. You have to be descriptive in explain, all right, or illustrate. But in state, you just have to list a particular phenomena briefly. Summarize. This is also a very common verb, and most of you would be knowing it. This is exactly what you do in precis writing or when you highlight your notes with a pen. That is what you are doing. You are summarizing. You are giving a condensed version of a complex phenomenon. You are taking out the main facts only. You are just highlighting the most important points, and you are omitting the superfluous information. You are just targeting the essence of a particular concept. And lastly, we have to what extent. So this is almost similar to how far do you agree with something, to what extent something is true. And in this, what you have to do, you have to give a thorough assessment of evidence that you are presenting to support your argument. And your job is not done here. To get extra marks, you have to explore any alternative explanations if they exist, and you have to say why yours is better than them. All right, you have to justify your stance eventually. So these were the verbs. Now we'll come back to some other issues. Okay, so we saw the various verbs. We have seen the ideal steps that are to be taken in the examination hall. And now we come to the tripartite structure based on what UPSC evaluates your answer. So every question is like a mini essay. It has to be clearly subdivided into an introduction, main body, and conclusion. Although the introduction and conclusion will be very, very brief, maybe even 1 or 2 lines maximum. Over here, what you have to do, but they must not be sacrificed at the cost of each other, because all of them will be evaluated independently. All right, there will be some quota of marks for introduction, conclusion, and main body. All right. So in introduction, you have to set the scene, you have to define certain terms, you have to emphasize a concept. Like if you're talking about corruption, you have to give some recent example, bringing out the importance of this topic, why we need to discuss corruption, like what it has caused to our country and things like that. This is what you have to do in introduction. Main body, you have to present your case as per the requirements of the verb. The discussion we had prior to this, all the verbs that we discussed, that verb will tell you what you have to do in the main body. In the main body, you have to use a lot of factual data, that is official data or authentic data, to support your arguments. You might have to draw tables, graphs, diagrams to add some value to your presentation, or to illustrate your point more clearly. And You also have to give logical or verbal testimony to support your claims. You don't have to give mere opinions, you have to justify those opinions. You can use any factual data, or you can use logical arguments, or you can use verbal testimony to support your claims. Now, what is verbal testimony? Verbal testimony means the word of an authoritative person. All right. Your second paper, GS2, is all about polity and governance. So whenever you are talking about a complex legal issue, whatever viewpoints you might have as a person may not be very relevant or may not be very impressive. But if you give a quotation of a Supreme Court judgment, that is verbal testimony, because Supreme Court is the final interpreter of the Constitution and general law in the country. So Supreme Court's word is taken as the final word on any legal issue. So if you quote judgments, you will be adding a lot of weight to your arguments. The third part of an ideal question response is conclusion. In conclusion, you have to refer back to the question. You have to give like closing comments, and you have to summarize the arguments of main body briefly. You don't have to introduce any new points over here. Conclusion is slightly different from way forward, in that you have to refer back to the question itself again. All three sides, so I'm not answer for another. Like if you know a lot of points in main body and you completely skip the conclusion, you might get zero for the quota of marks that were allotted for the conclusion. Next thing is reading for over a year. You have read a lot of editorials, different books, different notes. How to condense that into a perfect question, perfect response in a very limited amount of time, that requires a lot of practice. There should be some templates regarding every topic inside your head. Most of the topics, there might be some topics that come out of the blue, you cannot help that. But if you are a hard working candidate, most of the questions, like even 90%, would be known to you in advance, and you must have certain templates of the responses inside your head. So how to create templates for UPSC answer writing? What you can do is that you can download copies of toppers and try to mimic their writing style, or they have a lot of templates. A lot of toppers also share their notes after they qualify this exam. You can find it on Insights or Vision IS, or all of the over the internet. They have their own blogs, so you can download it from there. And certain topics are evergreen, like women empowerment, Gandhian principle, democracy, uh, corruption, second ARC, and everything. So there are some ready-made templates which you can learn. You can try to mimic them, and that is how you get your own templates. Second thing you can do, and this is very essential, you can practice more answer writing. So you'll develop a kind of cache memory, like your phone or your computer has cache memory. If you are opening an app again and again, so it stores a small portion or template of that app inside its efficient memory called cache memory, and immediately presents it without much delay. So similarly, you might develop cache memory if you are practicing something over and over again. You might have to cram some standard definitions like urbanization, women empowerment, financial inclusion, technical terms like that, social stratification, Sanskritization. So you need to have some standard definition of these things inside your head. And you might have to cram some data like important articles, Supreme Court judgments, economic survey, certain facts and figures, export surplus or fiscal deficit, and things like that. Next, we come to fodder, something called fodder, which is a very famous word in UPSC circles. How to collect fodder or value addition to your answer. So there are several sources from which you can collect a lot of fodder. Sources like In case of polity paper, you can refer to PRS legislative research. They break down very complex bills into very simpler formats, bullet points. They also have law commission data and summary of law commission reports, etc. So you can refer to them. Apart from that, for economy paper, you can refer to economic survey, that is the bible for economy, and you can get a lot of facts and figures from there. That is your fodder. For polity, as I said, Supreme Court judgments are the ultimate verbal testimony. So you have to cram a lot of Supreme Court judgments relating to some issues that are very important, like the issue of governor, SP Bommai case, then fundamental rights, Keshavanand Bharti case, basic structure, stuff like that. Then we have important articles for polity, constitutional articles, like everyone should by heart article 1 to 51 at least. If you are a serious candidate, you must be knowing all articles from 1 to 51 verbatim. All right. It's not very difficult if you are revising it again and again every morning or even weekly. After a few months, you'll remember it forever. Next, we have newspapers for real life examples. For ethics paper, case studies. A lot of DMs, they are very innovative. They do something exceptional that is highlighted by the media or in newspapers. So you must keep picking up on such stories and store them as anecdotes for essays or case study examples. Next, we have All India Radio Spotlight Analysis. They give a lot of important facts. They take names of a lot of committees and official data. So you must keep a note of all that. Apart from that, we have a big picture on Rajya Sabha TV. The good point of this show is that it will give you a lot of various viewpoints on complex topics. You don't have to watch every episode, but especially foreign policy episodes are very good, and they will call stakeholders from all sections of society. They will have bureaucrats, they will have common public, they will have legal experts, and all of them will give you for and against arguments. So this is a very good show where you can get a lot of fodder from. Then we have PI. Okay, so we were talking about how to collect fodder, and we were in PIB speeches, transcript for quotes and facts. You have speeches of a lot of dignitaries in PIB, like Venkaiah Naidu gives very good speeches, and his speeches usually contain a lot of fodder. He will go into ancient India, Indian culture. He will quote the Vedas and Upanishads and stuff like that are very good for essays and some history questions. Apart from that, Prime Minister also gives really good speeches, and his speeches contain a lot of facts and figures. Apart from that, it is handy if you listen to Man Ki Baat of Prime Minister, because if you are an aspiring administrator, you must pay attention to what your Prime Minister is saying. And a lot of case studies or anecdotes can emerge out of Man Ki Baat. Then we have editorials of, yeah.
Sir, your screen is not visible. Slides are
Okay.
not visible.
All right. Just a second. Okay. So we were talking about how to collect fodder, and I was at Man Ki Baat. Then we have editorials for various ideas and arguments. You can go for editorials in the Hindu; they are very comprehensive. You can also follow Indian Express. Editorials will generally give you a lot of quotes, ideas, facts, and figures, arguments. You'll get a lot of arguments from here, which will be used to build your answer. And finally, we come to some best practices on how not to make some silly mistakes inside the examination hall that will cost you dearly. We have people coming out with negative marks in the scorecard that UPSC deducted 5 marks or 10 marks for not following its rules. So better not to lose marks like that, because even a single mark is very precious in this level of examination. So what you can do is avoid using green or red color ink pens because these two inks are not recommended at all for students or aspirants. They are used by dignitaries or important functionaries of the government. And never write inside the margins. UPSC is very strict when it comes to writing in the margin. And you should adopt a convenient and visible font size. Some people write really small, some people write really big, so that causes space issues or visibility issues. You must adopt a convenient and visible font size. It should be optimum. Other thing you can do is that you should adopt a standard word count per line. Like instead of counting after every answer, like whether you have crossed the word limit or not and wasting time, if you have a habit of writing, let's say, 6 words or 7 words per line, you don't exceed that ever. All right, that also makes your answer look very neat and systematic. And other thing is that counting is not a problem. You just have to count the lines, and you know that you write only 7 words every line, so approximately you'll get the count immediately inside your head. It will save you a lot of time in the examination hall. Okay. So this is my presentation, and let's start the doubt session now. Okay, let's start the doubt session.